have two authors who write across genres: romance, mystery, thriller, horror, everything. So it's a real pleasure, and especially Andali, because I love Dil Dosti Dilemma. It was so much fun. And I love the feisty heroines, you know, and your men, your boys, they're also very delicious and very supportive of their feisty heroines. So I wanted to ask you about that first. You know, where do all these fantastic women and girls come from?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kaveri. It's a pleasure to be here at OLF. And regarding your question, I think a lot of these characters are sort of aspirational, guidelines for men, I think, because I don't really see such men, you don't see them. So they live in our imaginations. And we kind of hope that eventually one day they'll turn, they'll become real. But the heroines being feisty is something that I don't deliberately make it. Some heroines aren't just feisty, some are angry. Like one of the heroines from my novel, The Henna Startup, she is quite angry. So it really depends on the story.
For a just cause. Angry for a just cause, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
So, I think the stories, when they are just romances, then you have to focus on, the entire process of them getting together and then there's a breakup. You have to follow those tropes. But when you are writing young adult fiction, it kind of opens you up to more different possibilities where you don't just have to, necessarily have a happy ending. It's nice to have a happy ending, but you don't necessarily have to do that. So most of the boys in the books are like, they are supporting, they are supportive, because I think even when I want my sons to read the books, I want them to think that this is normal. This is how men are supposed to behave. So that is also, again, this is subconscious, I don't do it consciously. So that's about it.
Shabnam, the switch from journalism to fiction, I don't know how you do it because it's a very different kind of writing, right, from what we are used to in journalism.
Entirely different. In fact, I would say I took like 4 or 5 years to detox because I was a journalist for 10 years.
Detox is the right word. You were a journalist for 10 years.
Then I had 3 children very quickly, and I spent 3 or 4 years detoxing and serving them mashed potato and dudi. So that really helped.
I was reading Changing Wet Nappies.
Changing wet nappies, as we've all in this room done. But yeah, so the first book I tried to write read like one long report for Times of India and was utterly dire. And I put it aside and thought, this is not for me. But then one day when I sat down so I was trying to write adult literature at that point. And one day I sat down and I started a book, and I did not want to write children's literature. I was sick of children. I had 3 children crying and mumming every 2-3 minutes. And I wanted to return to a realm of adults. But the book that came out was a children's book. And I never looked back, strangely.
Right. Of course, you've been asked this question very often, but really, what do your children think of your fiction?
So they are super supportive. They're my first readers, and they are my biggest critics. And they scold me viciously right from the beginning. Like, Mommy, nobody says One Direction. It's 1D. And then next book, Mommy, 1D is out. Everyone will laugh at you if you put them in. They are my testing ground. So, for example, scary books. Saira Zariwala is Afraid, I tried on them. One of them said I couldn't sleep 2 nights. So I said, okay, 2 nights is right for a teenager.
Mean.
So yeah, so they are very good. Even for Zen, I really was confused by that book because it is a slightly political book. Conservative boy, liberal girl. And my girls were very invested. They were very pro the girls in the book, very hateful of the boys, and monitored me. Happy ending, the only happy ending is if they break up. But when you're a child, it's very black and white. Adults, I think we function more in gray.
Right. So, Andali, for you, how important is representation? Because, they belong, the women especially, they belong to a particular milieu, they're really rooted to it. So, how important is that?
I think representation is a lot, it's everything I feel, because how often do you see a Muslim author writing about Muslim people and, writing about normal Muslim people? Because I have
Normal as in...
Yes, I have to, yes, in air quotes, because whatever popular culture has created, this whole, idea of whatever Muslims are like in movies, in shows, everywhere, So, and whenever I write, it's never been that, oh, I have to set this right, I have always endeavored to write about people like me, people like my family, and, through that, show the world that this is how we are. We are just as Indians as everyone else, and it's sad that I have to spell it out, But apart from that, my only agenda is to write a good story. So I really want to tell a good story, an entertaining story. And at the end of it, if my readers feel that, oh, this sort of stuff happens in our families also, and if they can think a little more, then well and good. But if they are entertained, and if they can see this for, a story, but also see beyond it as something that, that they should also probably reconsider, then I would say I'd be very happy about that.
What I like especially about your work is the intergenerational relationships, which I think is very important. We don't see that much because our families have become so nuclear, But I love that. And talk a little about how you do that.
So I come from a family with, a lot of people in it who now have moved abroad or have passed away. But that whole concept of family is very strong, which is, again, something I explored in this book also. This also...
a new one, right?
Yeah, this is a new one, which Speaking Tiger brought out. So this also has a grandmother, the hero's grandmother, So I think it's nice to show this also, this aspect also, because so much of our, like you said, this aspect of our culture is gone now. It's not for any reason, it's just that practicality has crept in, And I mean, it can exist in books, at least, So that sort of thing. And I'm not saying all grandparents and everyone, it's not like it's every time it's a wonderful story, Grandparents can be toxic too. So, it's not all hunky-dory, but it's nice to, so I don't attempt to create a hum aapke hain kaun type of family, It's a normal family and things happen. And, so like even in Asmara's Summer, which was Dil Dosti Dilemma, the grandmother and granddaughter dynamic was something that everyone really loved,
Yeah.
In the show,
That was
in
the
book.
nicest bit.
Yeah. So I think that's something that's very intrinsic to me also. So I really loved my grandmother. So, she passed away 25 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so, but, and she kind of never got to see me become a writer or anything. So I
But
feel...
was she a storyteller too?
Yes, she was a storyteller. So, she was a storyteller. My father was a storyteller. So I think I've kind of, my father and this is my maternal grandmother.
Right.
So, from two different directions, the genes must have just come.
Shabnam, I'm going to ask her about Bangalore as well because that's a real character in her books. But Mumbai is as much in yours. Talk a little about the Mumbai of your books and how much research you actually do.
So Mumbai is a protagonist.
Yeah.
I would say as
It's a
much as
star.
the girls. Yeah. And from day one, my first book I dedicated to Mumbai, irritating my family quite a bit.
Why? Oh, they wanted
My
a...
husband said, you should dedicate it to me. But yeah, so in every book, Mumbai is there, different corners of the city. In fact, on my way to the airport when I was driving here, I drove through one area which I haven't visited in some
Which
time.
one?
One area in Mumbai called Lal Bagh.
Oh, yeah,
Because,
where they have the Ganesh...
yeah,
yeah,
exactly, Ganesh Gali.
Yeah.
So, and the big Ganpati. And I just wanted to go back there because the characters in my new book are staying in an Airbnb there. And just wanted to feel it
But they
again.
have a new flyover which is
Yeah.
sort of ruined that.
So Mumbai's changed and changing, but
Right.
the heart of the city remains. And to me, what is incredible about Mumbai is its huge ability to adjust and tolerate and enjoy and accept others and make them their own.
Right.
And there's this real sense of adjust kar lo, and everybody does. Jara sarko, and everybody will sarko in the trains.
Sarko.
Sarko. Sarka. In the train, it's meant
Yeah,
for
yeah,
three,
yeah.
but a woman will come and say Sarka, and then 4 or 5 will sit. And I love that about my city. And Mumbai is important. I've written non-fiction on the city, and that non-fiction has really fed into my books also. Because I think when you understand how a city has grown over 200 years, you understand that the present that you occupy is built on so many pasts.
Right.
And I think that sense of time passing has become more and more important to me.
Right.
It has become integral to a lot of the writing I'm doing.
And I think people appreciate that when they read the books.
Yeah.
I mean, they like that aspect of it as well. And the Mumbai girl is a very particular kind
Yes,
of girl,
yes.
right?
A very.
What is
I
she?
will.
What is she like?
So the Mumbai girl, again, is a girl who will jump into trains and jump into buses. And so when I was in college, there was a horrible spate of people who were sitting and pinching bits of you that I cannot politely name here when we climbed onto the bus. So my friend Alka, a Mumbai girl, one day pulled out a flick, like this, those knives with a button, and the knife would go darang. The only problem is her knife wasn't connected. So the whole blade went daram, daram, daram at the bus stop, making a statement. Anybody who does anything to me, you are in trouble.
Right.
And I think that is the Mumbai girl, people who will just be functioning everywhere. And a lot of my girls are like that.
Yeah.
And of course, it irritates a lot of boys that my books are so girl-centric.
Yeah.
And I have a little nephew, and he said, Shabnam Faiji, next book have a boy protagonist. So I tried, okay? So in one of my books, What Maya Saw, I decided that 3 protagonists, 1 will be a boy. The boy turned out to be a full coward, ran away from the thing. Not my fault. It's a gender problem.
So, do your characters sort of just take over your life and you can't control them?
Entirely, and I think Andalib will agree. So my book Zen, for example, my editor kept writing and saying, okay, where is the book? It's been 2 years. I kept saying, I'm almost done. I just have to end it. But my characters just kept doing another fight and having another big showdown. And it just went on, became this monster. And I never intended it. And this happens, I think, to all of us, right? The characters become so real. They do their thing. And it becomes quite difficult sometimes because then you have to rewrite from the beginning
Right.
if your character has mutated midway.
My characters listen to me.
Your characters, sorry, I didn't
I
hear.
said my characters listen to me.
They're very disciplined. Are they like your children or?
I never said my children listen to me.
Yeah, no one listens
The,
to me.
the children don't listen to you. So I think you take out all your angst in the book.
Yes, definitely.
But talk about Bangalore because, often the Bangalore you depict is so different from the Bangalore we see, the high-tech city and the big traffic jams. But also, it's a very different and calmer Bangalore, I would say.
Definitely, because, I moved to Bangalore when I was just 2 years old.
Oh.
And this is like in the 80s. So that Bangalore was very different from what it is today. Bangalore used to be called the pensioners' paradise
I
and
know.
Garden City.
Garden
And,
City,
people
Lake
like
City, where are the lakes
So
now?
people like me who have lived through Bangalore's evolution do remember that,
Right.
We do see that, and I think I do try to represent that. There are pockets of Bangalore which still have that, which still exude that charm. The biggest reason why I write about Bangalore is simply because I haven't lived anywhere else. And I feel it's somewhat inauthentic of me to, write about another city with that same sense of authority, like, of having. So this one is split between Bangalore and Chennai, actually. So I'm a Tamilian. I'm from Tamil Nadu, from Vellore. But I've never lived in Chennai. So I've kind of tried something different here. But that's okay. I don't think that makes a difference so much. Setting these books in Bangalore is just for the reason that I want them to be authentic. in the sense like when people read it, they should know that, okay, there is really this sort of small gully off commercial street where you will get all these things. Like in the henna startup, they live in this place which is off commercial street, which is a very well-known place. So anyone who is familiar with Bangalore will immediately recognize it, you know.
Yeah, Commercial Street, even I know.
So, yeah. That's it.
No, so Shabnam, you know, just to return to the boys in your book, the space for boys also, I think somehow in fiction and in our imagination, it's not as expansive as the space we've made for girls. And I feel that's one area where we really need to do a lot of work, because as Andaleep said, it's also, you know, telling the boys how we would like them to be. And of course, raising the expectations of our girls, poor things. But how important is that for you?
Well, I do want to have more boy characters who are more pivotal and are more brave. And somehow, so even in this book, Murder at Daisy Apartments, which I eventually want to read from, it started out as twins, okay? But the girl just took over. So her twin just sits in his room and strums his guitar and tries to stay out of trouble. But, okay, so when you write romance, and when I did a romance book, the boy plays a very big role. Not the pleasantest role sometimes, but he's a very important figure. And actually, I really had to work on the character to make him three-dimensional. I think I'm a mom of three girls.
Right.
I'm female.
Your experiences.
Yeah, and when people meet me on the road, they'll say, oh, you're that woman. Or when they meet my husband, they'll say, oh, you're that only man in that house full of women. And so that is pretty much my world.
Right.
But, so I really am trying. So in my new series, which is called the Chickenpox Club, it's like just a detective series for middle grade. I plan to have each story told by a different voice in the club. So the first one was a girl, because that was easy for me. The next book, the narrator is going to be a boy. And I am terrified.
We are
Which
looking
reminds
forward.
me of Nora Ephron saying everything is copy. So how much of your girls' experience do you actually use? Do you actually use them as copy, as fodder?
A lot initially. Now, sadly, all three are in university. And I'm truly, truly worried that one day I will have to move out of children's writing because I don't have that kind of contact.
Right.
And you know, Anthony Horowitz once said, people asked him, why have you switched from children to adult? He said, my boys have grown up. They've not yet given me grandchildren. Where are my children? You know, where are they?
Right.
Where are those voices in my head? As of now, okay, my girls are still traumatized enough in university that they'll phone and give me, she said this and he said this. So, you know,
So
I'm
you
still
have
there.
that. Do you want to read from the, this is your new book?
The new book is not outside.
Okay, right, sure.
So I just picked up this book from outside. I thought it's a murder mystery. It's young adult. It's set during COVID.
Okay.
In Mumbai, buildings kept getting sealed because, unfortunately, somebody or the other would manage to get COVID. And when you were in a sealed building, nobody could step out for like 10 days. So this is two sealed buildings, one across from the other, and a girl in one building watches a murder in the other.
Oh, the Rear Window one, right?
So exactly, it's
Yeah,
inspired by Rear Window.
Yeah.
It was my big dream to do a Bombay Rear Window.
Yeah.
And when COVID came, I thought, never a better chance.
And nowhere else, I think, in India can you do a rear window,
Yeah.
because Bombay is amazing. Your neighbor's window is
Yeah.
right there, and nobody cares. They're not
Nobody-
looking at you, and you're not looking at them.
I fully know strange things about my neighbors, and they definitely know strange things about me.
But they don't care for curtains or what?
I don't like curtains. I have blinds, but they're such a pain.
Yeah, but I've seen that. It's the only city, I think, in the world where they don't believe in curtains, and they're happy that
Everybody.
everything is on display.
Yeah. So in this, the girl has a crush on the boy across from her. Her best friend lives across from her, and the murder takes place. So it's super convenient.
Yeah. Great. Please
Okay.
do, yeah.
So I'm just reading the beginning about, just a little bit in the beginning about how the building gets sealed. So Mr. Sevnani was taken away in an ambulance on the 43rd day of the lockdown. This was not exactly headline news. Mr. Sevnani was 78 years old. He had a bad heart and an even worse temper. He had often been ferried across the city in a white ambulance with a flashing red light and a wee wow wail. This time, though, it was different. This time, Mr. Sevnani was taken away by a swarm of men wearing masks and flapping blue safety suits. The neighbors didn't pop out to say, "Get well soon, uncle." Instead, they stood at their windows and shuddered as the white vehicle drove away with its trembling invalid and its sinister blue crew. After which they tried to remember if they'd shared the elevator with Mr. Sevnani over the last few days. This was the most OMG moment in the history of Lily Apartments, so it seemed totally unfair that we'd missed the action. Ved and I had woken up late. While events were unfolding on the floor downstairs, we were slumped at the dining table with uncombed hair and unscrubbed faces. Our mum, in turn, was drinking her tea, phoning the vegetable shop for the 17th time, and delivering her standard 9:57 a.m. lecture, the one about waking up on time, brushing our teeth, and keeping our bedroom tidy. It bugged my mother that Ved and I had turned into spineless, blobby creatures who looked and behaved like twin jellyfish. She refused to accept that, at the moment, we had no reason to use our toothbrushes, our hairbrushes, our brains, or our backbones. What was the point?
Lovely. Could we have some applause for that? Thank you. Anjali, what are you going to read? I would love the poem that you recited at the end of Dil Dosti, but of course it's your call.
So that poem is actually something that they sprung on me, you know. They wanted me to do a cameo in the show, which itself I was quite surprised. But then 2 days before I was supposed to fly out, they say I was supposed to be in the crowd when that concert was going on.
Where was that concert staged?
A majority of the film,
the series we're talking about is Dil Dosti Dilemma. It's on Disney?
Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime. Right.
So a majority of the show was shot in Mumbai, and they shot few key scenes in Bangalore, like, you know, a few key locations and all that. They came to Bangalore. But that was the finale for which they'd called me, you know. So 2 days before, they told me, we want you to read out a poem, and then we want you to go on stage and read it out. So that 2 minutes took like an hour and a half to shoot, you know. And it was, I would say it was rather traumatizing in the sense, it's not like I'm not used to being on stage, but that is a very different ballgame, you know.
Right.
Because your mics are, you know, somewhere a mic is there and I'm talking on a mic, but my voice is not magnified.
Right.
So my brain is not computing, why is my voice not magnified? And obviously my energy was very different. So if you want me to read that out, I can read it out, or I can read out something from my book.
Sure, your book.
Because
this is the new one, right?
Yeah, because that's not I didn't write that poem, and it was relevant to the storyline because that was a storyline they added, which was not in my book.
Which is not in the book.
Yeah.
But it's a good plot point, no?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a story about two Instagram influencers, actually. Yeah, so, you know, maybe I'll just read out the back, what this is about. So she's an Instagram influencer with 1 million followers. His cooking videos are rapidly gaining likes and followers. In a social media driven world, is there any place for real love to blossom? So Kashish Asif is a popular Instagrammer, navigates life at 18, accompanied by her widowed father and occasionally present older sister. As her witty reels earn her a large following, she falls into an online battle with Samir, an aspiring cook and budding Instagrammer. But their playful conflict soon gets blown out of proportion through an error of judgment. Then, unexpectedly, they meet in real life. And even more unexpectedly, sparks fly between them. And when reality creeps in and an unfortunate incident forces them to unplug from their phones, they will need to figure out how to deal with life and relationships away from the screens. Is it possible to find a real friend or someone more than a friend in a world where reactions are staged, people pretend to date each other for likes, and the only constant is that everything really, really sucks?
Nice. So I think the perfect book for a lot of young people to read.
Yes, definitely.
But, you know, One question I wanted to ask you, and I don't know how you'll react, but you know, the joy you spread through your writing. I know that there's a lot of pain and suffering behind it too. Uh, how do you channel your pain?
So the pain, I would say, is something,
You want to
pain is
tell
relative.
people, little.
I mean, it's relative in the sense I'm not unacquainted with grief. I lost my father at a very young age. I was 12 when he passed away. And for a long time, that kind of defined who I was, And then I grew up, got married very early, had my kids, became a writer. And then everything was just going on. And 2021, the second wave of COVID took away my husband and my mother-in-law, back to back. And one of the things that really helped me was being in my mother's house. I had the privilege of being able to grieve. I think a lot of
Your
people don't
mother's
have
here
that.
in the
Yeah, my
audience,
mother is
right?
here in the audience. So a lot of people don't have that privilege to grieve, And I think for me, I had that. I'm always grateful to that. But I think what really helped me was getting back to writing. Because writing, I felt like my life was out of control. And writing was where I was in control. And it kind of helped me to structure my day around my writing because there was nothing else, there were no phone calls to the hospital, nothing to do. So it kind of became a very difficult period, and I would say writing definitely saved my sanity. So if it gives joy to people, then I would say it's a lovely added benefit, but to be very honest, I was just doing it for myself.
Yeah, but it's something that I think everybody really enjoys. And isn't it a wonderful thing when you meet your readers? I wonder how you feel.
Definitely.
Does that often happen to you? Do you bump into your readers and they tell you, this particular character moved me or gave me so much pleasure?
So a lot of my readers reach out to me on social media.
Right.
So I'm very present on Instagram myself. One of my readers is here. She came and she, took a
Selfie.
selfie and a sign. Got me to sign her copy of this book. So it's always wonderful. It's a little surreal for me because I'm such a homebody. I never leave unless I'm forced to, like for LitFest. I'm always at home, and I'm sitting at my desk and I'm writing a book. And some part of, some place in some small city or some big city, small town, someone has read the book and they've connected and they reach out to me on social media, or if I go to their city, if I'm lucky enough and I meet them, it's just mind-boggling for me, that because I still don't compute that, I've written all these books.
But you've written 40.
48 actually.
48 books in a 12-year career.
15 years.
15. I mean, what is it? You write 2 books a year? At
No,
least. 3 books a
I
year.
write more than that because I self-publish also.
Yeah.
So I self-publish on Amazon, which is a different beast, You have to bring out a book every 3 months to satisfy the readers.
Really?
So I kind of slowed back on that aspect because, I felt like I was in those hamster wheels, because I write one book and the readers will read it and they'll be like, where's the next one? I'm
Really?
like, give me a break. So I'm like, let them wait. And I'm taking it at my own pace. Otherwise, I would have crossed 50 this year because of that, So this year, last year, Henna Startup was published by Duckbill. This year, this book and a graphic novel, a Scare Walk with HarperCollins. And I have an upcoming memoir with Speaking Tiger about my whole experience in the COVID
Right.
thing. So that I think
Only
is...
that. Only these 3. The 4, whatever.
Yeah, I
Amazing.
mean, as of now.
Shabnam, you've also written, I don't know how many books. How many is it now?
I think about 15 and then some picture books, but nothing like Andalib's
But
record.
still, that's such a discipline of,
It is.
just being, just delivering on time, delivering the requisite number of words.
That's thanks to journalism.
Of course, but
We're
it's
trained.
much longer.
Yeah. But that sense of I have a deadline.
Right.
Yeah.
And are you also like Andalib, a homebody and just want to
Completely.
stick to your...
Completely.
I think we've all become like
Yeah.
that.
So
Nothing like the writing desk.
the minute my girls would leave at 7:55 for school, I would sit in my pajamas and nobody was allowed to talk to me till like lunchtime.
Right.
And then
Now,
life
of course,
kicked
you
in.
have much more.
Now I
time.
have, they phone from the US and expect, you have no time for me. So then,
So I wonder what do you have on your writing desk, Shabnam, apart from, I guess, your laptop?
I have my laptop, I have a box from China that my best friend from school gave me, which is filled with pins. I have a couple of awards. I have a printer that doesn't work. that needs
Actually,
to
I
be
have a
repaired.
couple of awards.
Couple of awards. Why do you have the pins? For what reason?
Because every time my girls buy these ill-fitting clothes, I have to pin them and
Ah,
send them to the tailor.
Right.
So-
And
And then some friends' books. And oh God, unpaid bills. Very bad with electricity bills, etc.
Anjali, what about you? What's your writing desk like?
So my writing desk has evolved over the years. So right now I've moved back to my mom's place and I have a huge desk over there actually. So it's getting more cluttered than normal. My laptop, stand, keyboard, everything. And you know, the usual knick-knack. And I have like a lot of notebooks, you know. I'm
Right.
crazy about notebooks. So each time I think of a new story, I have to pull out a new notebook. So
Right.
for that, I've got a nice, good stock of notebooks. So
And they're all
notebooks-
neatly labeled?
no,
or-
no.
So-
So the only place I'm organized and not chaotic is in the books, actually. You know, when the books I'm writing, everything else is chaotic.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you. It was such a pleasure, and thank you for reading out from your books as well. And I would highly recommend that you read their books. They'll give you a lot of joy. Thank you.